Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 1982 teen sex comedy as well as coming-of-age drama. I know, that's quite the combination of genres. Titled The Last American Virgin. Now, this is a film that is a remake, actually, of a foreign film called Eskimo Limon, which translates into lemon popsicle. Now, it's directed by Boaz Davidson, who you might recognize. He is well known for being a producer. He produced a lot of things. He directed a lot of films, foreign films. He directed Lemon Popsicle. So this is an American remake of his own movie. He's done some other movies like Hospital Massacre, Going Bananas, American Cyborg, Steel Warrior. But he's, for the most part, probably well known for his producing work, at least for most people. He produced Rambo 2008, he produced The Expendables, and in The Expendables 2 as an executive producer. So, yeah, he is known for being a producer, but he also has dabbled in screenwriting and directing. So he directed this film, and to be perfectly honest, his direction in this is really not that great. It's a movie that, yeah, on one hand, you don't necessarily expect like amazing, crazy good direction or a lot of originality when it comes to the camera work, but things are very flat here. Things really don't have a lot of energy, let alone any sort of semblance of talent other than the average everyday director, the kind of stuff that you would see in a TV show, in a sitcom, or a TV movie. So the film kind of has this TV movie sitcom kind of quality to it as a result. It would have been interesting to see what this film would have been like, or how it might have turned out if you had a different director who had a little bit more experience, or at least had more talent. Not necessarily talent, but I guess knew more techniques when it comes to filmmaking that other than just the basics. It seems like Boaz Davidson is one of those directors who mastered the basics but never really mastered anything else. Which, I mean, that in itself is a feat. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly no small feat because of the fact that directing is not easy. But at the same time, I just in when it comes to movies and when it comes to Hollywood, there are so many directors who have mastered the basics. What really makes a director stand out, and what really makes their films stand out as a result, is when they are able to go beyond that. And there's a lot of directors who are doing first time stuff that still, in my opinion, created some really unique films in terms of the appearance and in terms of the overall camera work and the techniques that were employed. And there's really not anything like that in this movie. It's written by Boaz Davidson as well. And I get it's a passion project of his. He did the original. So this is something that he's trying to do to, I guess, bring this franchise to the American public. Like, he had this grand idea that this is going to be a series of Last American movies, like his Lemon Popsicle series, which had like 8 or 9 different films total. But that's not what happened with Last American Virgin. And I think, just like it would have been interesting to have seen another person lend their particular approach to the direction, I would have liked to have seen at least another writer brought on board to work with the concepts, to punch up the dialogue, to make the humor consistent and actually make the film funny, because it's trying to be comedic, but other than maybe like one or two chuckles, it's not really that funny of a movie. It relies way too much on awkward moments to get the majority of its laughs. And after like the third or fourth time, you're done. Because you're like, okay, I figured out the formula. I get it. Oh, ho, ho, it's awkward. Haha, hilarious. But I don't find it funny anymore. Because it's just this awkwardness just doesn't work after a while. And then the other stuff is just raunchy humor, where it's just trying to be as raunchy as it possibly can be for humor's sake. One good example of this is a sequence at a drugstore where the three main characters, after they've gotten crabs after having sex with a hooker, which is always a mistake. You don't know where that pussy has been. So anyway, they they get crabs, and so they go to the drugstore, and there's the whole awkwardness again where they don't, really want to say exactly what they have, and make the guy at the counter play a guessing game. And then of course it gets a little raunchier and so on and so forth, and the whole thing is raunchy because it's about crabs. But it's just one of those things that it just felt like it really dragged on. And there's a lot of stuff like that throughout this movie with these awkward moments. Like there's a whole party scene early on, which really honestly, the majority of this party scene is just peppered with one awkward moment after another. And I guess I'm just not the biggest fan of awkward humor, especially if you overdo it. It can work in small doses, but awkward humor is something that, to me personally, if you overdo awkward humor, just like if you overdo slapstick, it loses its luster and its overall ability to make you laugh with each time that it just keeps happening on screen. The first hour of the film is also this incredibly generic sex comedy that you've seen done before and done better in other movies like Porky's, or in all honesty, I thought Book of Love did a better job. And that film doesn't really have as much of a cult following as The Last American Virgin does. Now, where the screenplay, though, and where the story actually shines, and what ultimately makes the film an okay film to me, an average movie, is the dramatic elements. The raunchy teen sex comedy stuff really was honestly kind of boring to me, and I wasn't really that engaging because of how typical it was, other than like one scene with this older gal, Carmela, played by Louisa Moritz. Other than that one sequence, which was just entertaining because of how just surreal it was, with Carmela, who sounds like she's huffing helium and stuff like that. But other than that, there really wasn't much to write home about those sequences. Then, with 30 minutes left in the movie, it really takes a serious, sharp turn. So where you have the character of Karen, played by Diane Franklin, she gets knocked up by Rick, played by Steve Antin, and Steve Antin breaks up with her because he doesn't want to deal with the responsibility of being a father. And so this causes a falling out between the two, between Rick and Karen. And then at the same time, it also causes Gary to grow a backbone and actually call out his friend Rick for what he is, an asshole. So Gary's actually starting to show some genuine character development at this point. He's actually starting to show more of an arc as a character. And he sells most of his possessions, gets some a loan from his boss at the pizza place to actually pay for Karen's abortion. And he takes care of her after the surgery and after the operation. And it seems like there is a moment of mutual affection that's shared between Karen and Gary. And it's honestly one of the most well acted and honestly well done sequences in the movie, because you really buy the emotions that are presented in this particular sequence, and the acting by Lawrence Monoson and Diane Franklin in that particular scene is really, really terrific. But where the film really has gotten its reputation is due to its dark, bleak, and realistic ending, which is very different from the norm when it comes to an 80s teen sex comedy or even an 80s teen drama. Uh, and what happens is Gary, he thinks that he's finally going to have a long-lasting relationship with the love of his life and Karen. He gets a special gift for her because he's invited to her birthday party. So he goes to her birthday party thinking this is just gonna be another chapter in their love affair, and he then finds out from a party guest that she's not there, but she's in the kitchen, because she's not in the living room partying with everyone else. She's in the kitchen. So he opens the kitchen door and he sees his asshole friend Rick back together with Karen, and they're making out, and he is just devastated and he's speechless. And you see a shot, what honestly is probably the best shot out of the entire movie, cinematography or directing wise, where Karen has her arms around Rick and is looking at Gary. She's got tears in her eyes and she's got this look of sadness. And then Gary runs out of the party and gets in his car and he drives away crying, and then end credits. So that is what the film is most famous for, is the gut punch of an ending. And that is the last 30 minutes with the abortion, which is handled tastefully and with a lot more seriousness than you would think a film like this would have, considering the first hour is just your typical teen sex comedy. But after that, then you have the real stunner, which is the ending of the movie. And I appreciate this ending a lot. In fact, I like it. I think it works for this movie. I personally feel it could have been a little bit more impactful, and I'll get to why I feel that way soon enough. This is one of those movies that took me a bit to really hone my overall feelings for it. Like when I first saw it, I was like, I don't like the ending, or I was like, I don't like the way that they set it up. But now, after thinking about it some more, mulling on things, I don't mind the way the ending is set up. I don't think it needs to be more cathartic. I don't think that it's an ending that needs to be happier or anything like that. I like the darkness of the ending. I like the bleakness. It makes the film stand out. Because there are a lot of films from this particular era and since that deal with teenagers that really show this idealistic way, or not necessarily way, but idealistic form of love. This whole, if you sacrifice everything, or if you do go out of your way to get the love of your life, you'll be rewarded, that kind of thing. And this film shows you the hard reality of when that doesn't work out. And in all honesty, it doesn't work out that much. I don't think it's true that it never happens like it does in the movies, but it isn't very common. So this film shows a more realistic and also more common result when it comes to this kind of overall experience with teenage love. But the reason why it's not as impactful to me is because I wasn't as emotionally devastated as other audience members have been when they see this movie. I think it's because they connect more with Gary. I didn't connect that much with Gary. And I think in large part is because the screenplay didn't do a very good job making him a likable character. I didn't think he was that likable. I thought he acted like a jealous asshole when he found out his friend Rick was dating Karen. Part of me gets it because he's got his heart aches for her and he's wanted her his whole life, so it's jealousy. I get it, but it goes a little bit farther beyond that, and he just acted like a dick and continued to act like an asshole, and to the point where he even stalked Rick when he found out that he was going to the football field with her to pop her cherry, and he's fucking stalking his boyfriend and Karen and hanging out under the bleachers as they make out. So the film did not do a very good job making him that likable of a character. And on top of that, I mean, you have the bleacher scene, you have the jealousy stuff where he gets drunk and treats his friend like he's well, I mean, his friend kind of is an asshole, but he wasn't really handling things the best way either, in my opinion. And then you have stuff like he just willingly takes part in some of his friend's cruel shenanigans, like stealing this guy's car and leaving it in the ocean somewhere. So really, the screenplay did not do a good job making him that likable of a character. Until he starts to change his ways, until he breaks off from Rick, calls him an asshole, and goes out of his way to try to help Karen. Then he starts to become a more likable character. But because of the way that the ending is set up, all of that is pretty much worthless and useless, and it's just there to set up his crushing disappointment. So he just comes back to square one as a character by the end of the movie. And that's just not very satisfying to me, and it also makes it so I'm not as sympathetic as I think the writer or the director had intended. You just make this character more likable from the beginning, and then when the ending happens, it really does feel like I'm getting my heart ripped out along with the lead character. But that's not what happens, at least for me personally. It's a very muted emotion. It's one of those things where it's like, that sucks, but you know what? You put her on a pedestal, it kind of serves you right, that kind of thing. So there's not really that kind of emotional explosion that I think the filmmakers really wanted. I didn't get that from the ending because the character of Gary was not written in a way where he was consistently likable. And speaking of likable, none of these characters are really that likable. And that's another reason why I felt the first hour or so was honestly kind of boring to me, other than the music, which honestly it's a really great soundtrack. You got songs by Devo, The Police, Oingo Boingo, Phil Seymour. U2 also has a little bit. The Cars, Gleaming Spires with their Are You Ready for the Sex Girls song. Keep on Loving You by REO Speedwagon. Blondie's In the Flesh. Really does have a great soundtrack. I think maybe Open Arms by Journey. Yeah, a really good soundtrack for this film. There's also a duet or some kind of ballad. I don't remember what the name of the song. Maybe it was Just Once by Quincy Jones featuring James Ingram. That might have been it. I think that was the one. That was honestly a really, really good song. So, yeah, legitimately good soundtrack. Not much of a musical, a score, because I don't think really there was a score. It was more of just songs, which worked. And so other than listening to some nice tunes and maybe getting to see some tits, the first hour wasn't really that enjoyable for me, because these characters weren't likable and they had no chemistry. And I think maybe that's intentional because I think maybe the screenplay is trying to show these friends as a group of friends who aren't really friends. They're just people who use one another for their personal gain, or in this film's case, their personal pleasure. But yeah, they just came across as either sleazy or jerks, and as a result, by default, Gary came across the same way. I mean, it doesn't help when you have Troy from the Goonies playing Rick. Like that guy, like he's like the perfect prick, really. Like I think that, and this is another role where he's just being a prick. Like I think I don't know if he's capable of doing anything else. I don't know if he's capable of playing any other kind of role. He was a prick in Survival Quest. He was a prick in the Goonies. He was a prick in this. You know, Rick the Prick. But yeah, not a very likable character. Not really any likable characters. Didn't really like the lead that much. I thought it was either too selfish or just too wimpy. The character also, honestly, and if you ask me, the majority of this movie is just Jesse's Girl, the movie. You know that song by Rick Springfield? I wish that I had Jesse's Girl. Da, 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 da. So this film is basically Jesse's Girl, the movie. Why can't I find a woman like that? And I've always felt that song really should have been called something different. It should have been called Jealous Asshole. Because, you know, that's really what is going on in that song. This guy is jealous of his best friend and his girlfriend. Like, he wants her. You know, he's jealous of that relationship. And it's just so selfish and just so amazingly awful in terms of its douchebaggery. And this film really has a lot of moments like that. There's a whole scene where Gary is drunk and he's getting pissed at his friend Rick for dating Karen. And so it's like, it's Jesse's Girl. I wish that I had Karen because I'm a selfish asshole. Da 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 da. Anyway, yeah, but yeah, that's honestly what the majority of the first hour of the movie is. Then you get to the dramatic stuff, and that's where the film shines the most. And honestly, I wish the screenplay was full of more dramatic elements. I wish this was just a teen drama with a really dark, realistic bent. With some comedic elements at times. Maybe amp up the fact that this sex comedy stuff is meant to be more of a satire of 80s teen sex comedies. Because I saw some elements like that, especially with the scenes with the hooker. But it never really went all the way with that. So it would have been nice to have seen more of that. So if you had like a black comedy sort of thing with the satire of 80s teen sex comedies, and then had it be more serious throughout, I think this could have been a classic of the genre. But as it is, it's just a very fractured film. The first hour is kind of dull. I'm not really that into it. It's very forgettable to me. Then the last 30 minutes is really where the film is interesting and where the film leaves a mark. And it's just one of those movies where I just think that it really should have taken a different approach in terms of how everything was structured when it comes to the tone and when it comes to the overall way that things unfolded. Except for the ending. Like I said, I think the ending works. I just don't think it's as effective as it could be because I don't think Gary is that likable of a character. Speaking of Gary, we get to the cast. We got Lawrence Monoson as Gary. His performance is a mixed bag to me. there are some scenes where he nails it. There's other scenes where he really delivers his dialogue rather flatly and seems like he's really just getting started as an actor, to say the least. Diane Franklin, she's fine, but she really doesn't have a whole lot to do other than that particular scene with her and Gary where they share some sort of mutual affection. See, she seems to do her best acting when she's not even saying a word. Like when the director and the cinematographer is just trying to create emotion for her. She was also in Amityville 2, The Possession. I probably remember her the most from that. She played the sister in that film. She was also in Better Off Dead. She was in Terror Vision. She was also Princess Joanna in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But yeah, it was, she's definitely cute. I mean, she really does have a look about her that makes her desirable. So it was a good casting choice when it comes to like her being the focus of attention, her being the girl that Gary is putting on a pedestal. Steve Antin plays Rick once again. Like I said many times before in this video already, he plays a great prick. Joe Rubio plays David, who I think is their other friend. He's this chubby guy. It's not really the best actor, and you could see why he didn't really go on to do a whole lot. After this, I guess he was more well known for doing stuff on The Late Show with David Letterman as Letterman's stepson in a sketch. And because after this he did like Hot Chili and Striptease in 1996, and I think he did some other stuff. That's just his selected filmography, but actually no, that's really all that he did was those. And it says he was in Striptease, but I don't see it listed on his IMDb, so I think the Wikipedia needs to be updated. Louisa Moritz plays Carmela. Brian Peck is also in this. Yes, that Brian Peck. He plays a character named Victor. He's barely even in the movie. But yeah, it's rather, when you have that guy I'm not gonna say the film should be retroactively canceled because of Brian Peck's involvement, because I don't think there's any proof that he molested or did anything to anyone on the set of this movie. But it's still, unfortunately, one of those things where you're like, yeah, he's in the movie. Kimmy Robertson plays Rose. She's been in a lot of stuff. This is I guess her acting debut, and I thought she did a good job. She was in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. She was also in Honey, Shrunk the Kids as Gloria Forrester. She was in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, but her scenes were deleted. She was, she's been in a few things. She's an actress that normally gets confused with Victoria Jackson, because they have a very similar look. I remember her the most, honestly, as Lisa, the girlfriend in the episode of Tales from the Crypt, Top Billing, with John Lovitz from season 3. But yeah, she's fine here as Kimmy. She had this kind of sexy, nerdy vibe about her. And throughout the film, she was honestly being ignored by Gary, because he was just so starstruck over, and just has gone head over heels for Karen, so he didn't want anyone else. But yeah, she's the only other actor or actress that really gets a good amount of screen time in this. I think Brian Peck is the one that plays the nerdy guy, Victor. I think that's who it is. And the nerdy character in this, he's the most sympathetic character in the entire movie. The film tries to just paint him out as this loser, but you find out he has the biggest dick. because there's a whole dick measuring contest. Yeah, literally a dick measuring contest in this movie. So there's a dick measuring contest, and he has the biggest dick, and it seems like that might be an endearing moment where he bonds with the rest of his classmates, but no, they still treat him like shit and abuse him and use him later on. He's one of the only ones that's willing to call out Rick or anyone else for who they really are. He comes to their aid and lets them borrow his car for a night of sex. I think a night. Well, I don't know if it was really a night of sex, but a night of debauchery with Karen and Rose, and they just steal his car. He's willing to let them borrow it, but he just wants, actually no, he wants to come along. He's like, oh, you can borrow my car, but only if I come along. And I don't think that's really too much to ask for a guy who's going out of his way to let you use his car. And no, they steal his car and leave it in the fucking ocean. So really, you feel way more for Victor, played by a fucking pedophile and Brian Peck, than you do for your lead in Gary, played by Monoson. By Lawrence Monoson. That's when you have a screenplay that needs some work. When the nerdy character who's being picked on and is considered to be a loser is the only character that you feel sympathy for. Because I don't even ultimately feel that much sympathy for Karen, because she's really quick to get back in bed or start snogging with Rick. I mean, lightning fast. She goes to fucking ludicrous speed when it comes to getting back together with them. After he already showed her that he doesn't want her, he doesn't actually love her, he just uses her for sex, because he knocked her up, broke up with her because she was pregnant, and no, she's back together with him in no time. So she's not that likable either. And you don't feel that much sympathy for her either in that instance, as a result. But, yeah, it's just one of those movies. It's just kind of it's an interesting film, but it's also one of those movies that's kind of hard to talk about and review, because it's not really a great film to me. It's not a movie I particularly really liked or really enjoyed. It's not a film I would probably watch again or pay crazy, absurd prices to buy the Blu-ray from Arrow Video. That being said, I would like to get it one of these days just for the features. But it's just one of those movies that it is what it is. Like, it definitely has a unique ending, and the dramatic elements are very unique when it comes to this kind of movie, and especially with how they're handled. But it's just a film that things just don't quite click for me in the end. And also from a cinematography standpoint, the cinematography by Adam Greenberg, it's ugly. Like, this is an ugly looking movie. When it comes to cinematography most of the time. Like, the colors are either too muted or too faded, or it's just too bright, or it might have, it just looks really pastel, and like the kind of like muted pastel colors, which is really not very pleasing to the eye. But that might honestly be the transfer. It might not be the film itself, but from what I've seen, yeah, it's not really that, good looking of a movie, and the poster is pretty ugly too, so maybe that's kind of what that's just kind of what they were going for with the color palette. The editing by Breria Davidson, it's alright, I guess, but it's nothing particularly amazing. And for a film that has a running time of like 92 minutes, like I said, the first hour is not really that interesting. It's kind of dull for me, so it kind of drags a bit. But once it gets to the dramatic stuff in the last 30 minutes, it's interesting and actually maintains your interest. It's just one of those movies that I really feel that it would have benefited from a more consistent approach with the tone, with the overall structure of the film, and with if it had different voices when it comes to the screenplay, comes to the story, or the direction. It's one of those movies where I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if you are curious about it or you want to see a 80s teen sex comedy with dramatic elements that's done in a way that you do not see that much when it comes to this genre, I would recommend giving it a watch. Who knows? It might resonate more with you. It might be a film that you wind up liking a lot more than I did. But anyway, I really don't know what else to say about The Last American Virgin, except thanks for watching my review, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.